Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Skirmish Supremacy, episode something. I don't know. Tim forgot to tell me beforehand when he said, "Hey, you do the introduction." So, joining me is our host, Tim. Say hi, Tim.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
I said say hi. And we also have Liz Hunt from Hobby Hangouts with us tonight. I almost totally forgot that. I've spent way too many hours in there, including some hours sleeping, so...
Nothing wrong with that. Hi, everyone.
Anyways, tonight we're just going to sit around, we're going to chat a little bit. We got a few different things we're going to talk about, to include the Hobby Hangouts, because I've been having a fun time in there. Tim says I may be obsessed. He may
Not
be
once did I
right.
say that. All I've said is that you guys do that shit way too damn late for me.
Aww.
So, Liz, go ahead. Tell us about Hobby Hangouts.
All right. Well, the Hobby Hangouts is basically a place where everyone who hobbies can come and be with like-minded people and get their hobby on. And it's done over Google Hangouts. Pretty simple to use. We are at, I think, almost 1,200 members now. And we just, whoever is hosting a hangout, they just post it on the page and then you can just click to join. So yeah, that's pretty much what the Hobby Hangout is.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Pretty
Absolutely.
Lots of great people in there. And go in. Actually, Liz has been changing the banner every day to tell you just who's going to be hosting Hangouts that day.
Yep. Sometimes I forget, so it's kind of late when it gets changed, but at least it gets changed.
It gets changed.
Yep.
And there's people from all different time zones, regions.
Yeah, they're literally people from all over the world. One of our hosts is from Australia. We've got a whole bunch of people from the UK. There's a guy from Malaysia. So, I mean, it's spread out throughout the entire world.
Yeah. And you don't even have to be one of the official hosts to host a Hobby Hangout.
Yep. Literally anyone can host. I host from time to time when I am not busy. But we do have scheduled hosts, which are posted on the pinned post on the page.
All right, awesome. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time in there. I've been assembling, I've been painting. Some of the hosts, they do topics. Roderick last night, he's working on his Iron Painter stuff. So he talks about Iron Painter when he's on. Robert, I can't think of his last name right now. Well, just before he had a kid, he was about to do some tutorials on taking pictures, touching them up in Lightroom, and making them presentable to the world. So sometimes there's topics and all that. Like I said, I've had a lot of fun. I fell asleep in there one day because somebody was showing something at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, ooh, I want to see this, but ooh, I'm really tired.
And then somebody took a screenshot and drew a wiener
though.
on your face.
Yes. And then I woke up to wieners being drawn on my face.
Aw. Well, I mean, it happens. You can't fall asleep. At least not with your camera on, because then people know.
Exactly. Oh, they knew. They were laughing their asses off.
As I would have.
Oh, I know. I when I woke up, I'm like, oh, why the hell did I fall? Ah, shit. No, it was a great time. So, how can people get to Hobby Hangout?
It's literally www.facebook.com /groups/the Hobby Hangout.
Awesome.
And then just go on there and request to join, and either me or one of the other admins will add you in.
And Tim just dropped something.
Yep.
Actually, that's not me. That's my cat scratching at the door. So I got to go kick his ass for a second.
The cat wants in. Let me
We're
in.
out.
Or out.
No, he wants in.
Aw.
Not to worry, my dog decided, like 5 seconds before we started recording that he wants to bark. So if you hear that in the background, I'm sorry, folks.
I still haven't heard it.
Awesome.
So you're good.
All right, so first up on some of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight, there was an article that came in, or Tim sent me. I shouldn't say came in, really. It's on N-World, and it says, why we need to pay what games are worth, not what they think we should cost, or what they should cost.
So I'm actually going to let you two talk about this first. The primary reason why is because I'm a bit biased on this working in the industry. So I would much rather hear it from you guys that are, I don't want to say consumers because that makes it sound like all we care about is your damn money.
It is.
But it is not. However, I think your perspective would be better appreciated on this before I give my 2 cents.
All right, so the author starts out the article and he's just talking about, hey, we all know people that are cheapskates and want to get the books for free, stuff like that. I thought that's why I started a podcast, but so he goes on to say, when someone's setting their price or all that, they're not necessarily making their money back, and he gives a few kind of examples. Writers having to start GoFundMe campaigns when something catastrophic happens in their life. There's 3 or 4 examples, and I think most people can come up with more of where they're just not making enough money. Something happens, an accident, cancer, or any other disease that just debilitates them. All of a sudden they're left not making money because they're not working because they're sick, and not enough money coming in from revenue, sales. So he goes on to, give some examples of, you might have this book for 10, 20, 30 years and use it and get hours upon hours of enjoyment out of it. So why shouldn't you be willing to pay 60,
More.
70, 80, $100 for this book?
Now, keep in mind for our listeners out there, N-World is pretty much meant for RPGs. So this is an RPG-centric article. However, this can be applied across the industry as a whole.
Right. And yes, that's a good point. This is in reference to RPGs. The thing I see with it, personally, as a consumer or non-industry person at least, is that I generally am willing to pay for the book. I'm one of those people, I don't mind paying for the book normally. I may wait a while, I may try and get it on sale, depends on how much I want it. But Tim definitely knows that I have shiny syndrome, and I'm like, ooh, this looks cool.
Don't we all?
Like a raccoon on
Sure
meth.
we all do.
Raccoon on meth.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. I tend to spend a little bit more than what a lot of people spend on stuff. Especially if it's something through like drive through RPG or something like that. I feel like being able to pay them more for what they've produced
Right.
is better than like being like, oh, well, I only want to pay $5 for this $50 book directly from them. Like, I feel like it's just not a good thing to do that.
Right, I understand. Actually, There's always those humble bundles and stuff like that where you get a lot of stuff for relatively cheap.
Yeah, and I have friends who do Humble Bundle, and they'll pledge like the least amount that they possibly can.
Yep, and
And
oh, sorry.
which if that's what they want to do, I mean, I can't say anything bad about that, but personally I feel bad paying, the minimum amount.
Yeah, I agree. I usually pay a little bit more, but then I have my buddy that goes, "Oh, you got all those PDFs? Can you shoot me a copy?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we know all those people.
Yes,
Now,
we do.
I have certain friends, they basically amount to, I don't know, a crow. They just collect random shit and stuff, books, game systems. Not that they'll ever actually play them, but they'll collect them and just keep them. And so, them, I don't know, it's more they're just kind of coming across it. It has no real value to them.
Right.
And I don't know if I can call them out on that either. It's because they're not going out and sharing it with other people. Again, they're not trying to even play the system. They just, oh, hey, this looked neat, and
Hmm.
I glanced at it once, and it's now sitting in a dusty corner of the internet.
Yeah.
So the big question is how can you raise a price on something and then make another product, because that's what you see is, here's the core book, and then I write 10 more that all have stuff in it. So if the core book's $100, are people going to be willing to pay more for additional books?
Hmm.
Look at D&D is one of the best examples. D&D, Pathfinder,
Yeah.
Rifts. You know, some of those books aren't cheap to begin with. You are paying a pretty good premium, and then they just keep racking up. There's monster manuals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't even know what they're up to now.
There's a bunch.
Yeah. And that's just monster manuals. Then there's these characters, and then these characters, and these characters. If I'm paying $100 or even $50 for each of those books, after a certain point in time, I'm going to have to say, no, I just can't do it. Then
Yeah,
again,
but
if your name
you
is
still have
GW,
those who will.
you
Like,
you do.
I
You
mean,
do.
I'm not one of those people. Just especially, well, not with D&D at least. Like I have the books I need, and that's all I need. I'm never gonna DM, so I don't need to ever have any of those books.
Blasphemy.
I know. Me and DMing just do not go together. Um, but you have people who do, they do purchase all of the books, and they do get used. So I
Yep.
mean, it's kind of the same thing, just with more stuff, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say.
Well, in a lot of ways, and I was about to say it a second ago, as I say, no, Wizards of the Coast, I'm not going to buy all of your D&D books, but hello, Games Workshop. I do have a lot of their books. Most of them are in
Hmm.
digital format. I even spent $200 or whatever it was when it came out for the Adeptus Mechanicus special edition rulebook when it came out. Because it was worth it to me to get the cool, neat, shiny book and all the stuff that came in it. So, yes, there is a market for people who are going to do it, but your average people, you've also got to look at, basically your average income and the fact that you want new people to step in and start playing. If your book's $100 and that's just the first one you need, you're not going to get as many people playing. That's part of why with not RPGs, and actually even with RPGs, because Pathfinder did it, you start seeing them putting out here's a starter box. Everything you need to start playing in a box with the rules, even if they're abbreviated or small. But it at least gets people started playing the game.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, and I found this, actually I found this through Facebook when some people were getting a little not exactly happy with this person. Well, it more ended up being the article writer, but it's from Geek and Sundry, and it was, artist releases 300 printable D&D miniature patterns for free. And now, the one thing that I saw that started causing ire for people is the fact that there's a whole bunch of Reaper miniatures right in the top picture. What it turns out is that top picture is actually from the author of the post. It's a collection from Critical Role of their miniatures that they use in their YouTube video games. Now, the rest of the pictures are all credited with the gentleman who spent a year and a half creating these 300 models that are now available for sale. Or not sale. They aren't for sale. They're free. So this person went through all the monster manuals and made a model for each one of the creatures you can find in there.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. The interesting part is the fact that he released it for free. You can go onto his Shapeways, go into each individual. There isn't one big bundle of it, but go into each one of the files and download the STL. And if I understand it correctly, he even has the blessing of Wizards of the Coast to do this. To do the project, to take the art and make the models.
I'm still slightly flabbergasted. These are really good too.
They are. They're I know that somebody was going through looking at the sculpts, another sculptor, and said they're good. They're not the highest quality, but especially when you're 3D printing them and all that, they're going to meet all of your, especially monster needs.
Yeah.
And
so this guy literally created all of these, released them for free, and is not getting anything from them.
Exactly.
With the blessings of Wizards of the Coast.
With the blessings of Wizards of the Coast. I wonder if they cast any spells to keep him awake. Because 18 months and 300 models, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
So I find it interesting that on one hand we have somebody that's saying you need to pay more for the books. You need to not be cheapskates. You need to, support the writers, the authors, the artists, which I totally get. And then on the other hand, you have a guy, and now granted, this was his spare time. He had something else that was making him money, but he spent 18 months as a labor of love and put something out. Look at that as Joey from This Is Not a Test. He's had his book out for a while for This Is Not a Test, along with some miniatures that he's had designed for the game, and he's been selling it for $25 for a digital version, and it just went through an extremely successful Kickstarter to start getting it published in a book form, to get an actual hardcover out there. And this has all been a labor of love for him. He's making a little bit of money, but he's not making a whole lot. And especially not with the Kickstarter, with everything that he's got promised, he's not got a lot of extra money. So
right. Which is actually the difficult part of this entire. So one of the big things that the original article talks about on EndWorld is the fact that, again, it's not people paying more for the books. It's not like they're saying, hey, this monster manual is $60. You should really be paying $70. What they're saying is that pay what the MSRP of that book is worth. So, and this could be taken across everything when it comes time to board games, miniatures, RPGs. If somebody's got a product and they give you an MSRP and you're used to, bottom barrel discount shopping, and that's what people are expecting to pay all the time, is they just say, I don't want to pay the full price on that. I would much rather find it at a discount. I understand this is America. We can do whatever the hell we want. We're always going to try to find the best deals. However, when that becomes the norm, then what that means is that they're making less money off of a product that is a labor of love to them. Now, one of the things that was brought up in the article that kind of irritated the shit out of me a little bit when reading it, now I'm looking at this from the aspects of a game designer. I'm looking at this as the aspects of somebody who works in the industry and sees how much work that people put into, not just designing the game, but the logistics behind getting it printed, getting it shipped. Where is it shipping from? Where's your warehouse? How is the sales team selling it? How is it being perceived in the market? Do I have to do advertising? What kind of advertising do I have to do? All these things are costs that add up over time. And one of the things that irritated me in the article is people were saying, well, because it's a labor of love, you shouldn't, there's this idea that because it's a labor of love, you don't need to make a living wage. Like, you're already living the dream. Well, living the dream is great if you can pay your bills and support your family and everything else that you want to do outside of it. I mean, Liz, you said yourself you're a painter.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a commission painter.
I am a commission painter, and I love doing it, but I could not live off of commission painting. I have a day job.
Why is that? If you think about it, why is that?
Because people aren't going to pay that much. I mean, I would have to, number one, they would have to pay more per model for me to paint. Number two, I literally would be painting all day, all night. Like, I would probably hardly ever get sleep if I was trying to live off of commission painting.
Right. So you got to factor in the time it's going to take you to do all this.
Yes.
And what, and it comes down to that age-old question: what is your time worth? You have bills.
Yeah.
You
exactly.
have a house or an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
You love to paint. People love your work, but then they're not willing to pay you for it because they're saying, oh, well, you're living the dream. You're a commission painter. You get to paint models all day. I got to go to some shitty job somewhere that I hate. And then I'm going to sit there and try to haggle with you to get price down because I don't believe that what you're telling me of all the time it's going to take you to get those miniatures painted, your time is not worth it.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that is this bottom barrel attitude is what is, in a way, killing the industry. There is a reason why Fantasy Flight did what they did by separating out retail sellers and online, sellers. And everybody's all pissed off because of the fact that now they can't get their Fantasy Flight games at 50% off from, Joe Dickbag on the corner of the internet. They're all pissed off about it because at the end of the day, they don't think they have to pay for this. They think this is a hobby. This is something that should come for free. You should just give me all of this stuff for as little money as possible, and I will just keep accruing shit. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Fantasy Flight, if you take your commission painting and blow it up, let's say now you have 30 commission painters and all the overhead, and you have to make sure that all your painters are paid. You always have to make sure that they're working. At that point, you're probably paying health insurance You're paying, you're paying bills on a business license. You're doing all of this stuff that goes behind it, shipping logistics, everything that goes along with that, website maintenance, advertising in order to make sure that you get more business. That's all stuff that adds up and takes away from the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, if people are sitting there trying to haggle you down for half the price, you're already in the hole.
Yep.
So you also, a lot of people also don't look at it from the standpoint that when a distributor buys product, and I am not like giving anything away here. This isn't some industry secret. People should not be losing their shit over this. When a distributor buys product from a company, they're usually getting it at 60% off, selling it to a game store at 45% off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the game store themselves is, if they charge full MSRP, so let's look at a $100 board game. They paid 45% off MSRP, right? So they paid $65 for that board game. For a $100 board game, they paid $65. So they're going to sell it to you, and they're going to make a $45 profit. Now, on top of that, they have to pay the bills. They got to keep the electricity going. Mm-hmm. They have to pay employees. They have to make sure that somewhere in there they get paid. So take that and break it down into like $50 games, $25 games. They're getting them at 45% off. I don't know how people think that, like, because they found it on Amazon from some guy that like stole some shit off the back of a truck or whatever the case may be, they think that like that's the norm. And that's the problem that's coming with the industry now, is that people see these deep discounts and the fact that like they can go on Amazon and walk and have the balls to walk into a game store or walk over to like even the creator of the game at a convention and say, "Oh, I found this game on Amazon for $30. It's normally $90. Can I get it for $30?" Think about what somebody would think about what you would do if somebody said that to you about something you created. Like you had a miniature. Let's say that one miniature you painted really well, selling it for $100. I don't know what your rates are, but at the end of the day, they come up to you and say, "Oh yeah, my buddy could paint it for $30. Same model. How about you paint it for me for $30?"
It's funny that you say that because I actually have had those comments before when I tell somebody how much I charge. And honestly, I don't charge that much. Like, number one, I'm a slow painter, so I typically don't charge by the hour. But even if I was, like, $10 an hour, if it took me 2 hours to paint a model, which for me, that's just, like, unheard of. I mean, that's a $20 model for, like, a little better than tabletop quality. But, like, I had one person who wanted me to paint, like, I think it was, like, 17 models. And when I told them how much it was going to be, they were like, "Wow, that's a lot of money." And I was like, "Well, yeah, you've got to think about this. This is my time, my paint. Like, this is, you are paying for me to do this for you. And I'm taking time out of my day to do it." And basically what it boiled down to is that what my quality of my work wasn't worth what they thought they should pay or what I was asking for.
So I have experience with this as well. Not in commission painting, actually not even in this hobby. But last year I owned and ran a food truck for a short period of time. Still own it.
Was it tacos?
It was barbecue, and I did
barbecue. Oh, I love barbecue.
And I did barbecue tacos out of it.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
They were pretty good. I had people coming up because it was also handmade corn tortillas.
Oh, nice.
Which was one of my big sticking points. I made all the sauces. I made all the rubs. I made everything fresh from scratch daily. So at one point, my prices, I'm like, okay, looking at the books, because I've got insurance, I've got electricity, I've got water, I've got all these things that you still have to pay when you run a food truck, and then some, because I've still got to pay for gas for generators while I'm out. I've still got just lots of little expenses. I'm like, all right, I've got to increase my prices, not profits. I didn't make a dime actually, but I've got to I've got to increase my prices by about this much. And so I did, and I did a couple other things, and I had someone who had been showing up off and on, in the few months that I had been open, and I had increased the prices. And so when I charged him, because one of the other factors was I was giving out more food than what my original price costing took into account for. So, that was a factor as well. I'm giving you more food, need to charge you for that food, because each little thing, how much of the spice rub I put on there, that little cup of sauce that I give you, that side, that other side, that piece of bread that you ask for, every one of those little things just adds up. On top of that, when you do barbecue, when you do most any food, but barbecue is one of the big ones, you're losing about 25% of your product. Your price goes up before you've even actually sold it, just from cooking it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so guy came up and he just started complaining. He's like, "Oh, why'd your prices go up? They were, fine right where they were, da 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 da." And I'm like, "Do you want to come sit in here and look at my books? Come on in. Let's set you down. I think you'll walk out of here crying."
Yeah, I think people have a very skewed view of what someone's time is worth.
Well, a lot of that comes down to the fact that, like, we've been feeding into it. How many times do you see people saying, "Oh, well, if I can't be a salesman and sell it, or a saleswoman," I want to make sure I'm politically correct here. If I'm a salesperson selling stuff, like, if I don't want to be the salesperson, I'll just reduce my cost and I'll take less profit. But then it comes down to, how long can you do that without you just selling it by the boatload in order to meet the same profit that the person that sold it at 100% is worth? Mm-hmm. So, and that's the tough part. So, like with the End World article dealing with the RPGs, and even if we were to take that and expand it beyond RPGs and into board gaming, you look at all the back end costs of what it takes to not only produce the game but run a store and everything else that goes along with it. Of course, these people want you to pay full price. And just because they're doing it as a labor of love does not mean that they should do this shit for free. They still have to live. So then you look at the flip side of that, where you got the guy that did the 300 models. He did the sculpts for 300 different D&D models. Now, the reason why I say that he did it the right way is because, one, it was a labor of love. He is not taking any money away from this, and for that, the guy needs to be applauded. Like, if anything, if Wizards of the Coast was saying to me, "Sure, you go ahead and do that. You did all this work," I'd be like, "That's awesome." And the moment that people started taking and printing those models, at some point, I would start wanting some sort of a kickback from people, even if it's in the form of a donation. Because how much time did it take him to do that? You said 18 months?
18 months is what the article says.
Right. So it's not like he sat back on savings and did it over 18 months. He had a day job. Now, we're going to assume that he probably had, a family. He or she. I'm not sure who did it. This person had a family. Or even if they didn't, they still had other bills they had to pay, which means they had an 8-hour, an 8-hour a day, 9-to-5 job, possibly a part-time job as well. They're doing all of this stuff, which after a while, even though it's a labor of love, turns into work because there's deadlines, even if you set them yourself, to where he did this for an entire community of gamers. Now, with that, sure, that guy did it as a labor of love. And I'm not going to say that people have not put out products that are labors of love, free RPGs, things of that nature. You see them all the time on Drive-Thru RPG and places like that, where it's like people have their RPGs out there just for like $5-6 because they're like, you know what, I created it. It took me like 30 pages, took me maybe a year, whatever. I have a day job. Very similar to how Joe does it, to where he's like, I don't plan on, living my full life this way. Because but at the same time, Joe knows what it takes. If he was to take This Is Not a Test, make it something big to where it was distributed, he would have to quit his day job. Have to. The logistics would need to match that. And so that's the thing that I a lot of people, we start talking about this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're all just a bunch of big corporate dick bags. We just want to play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's like, you're missing the point of how this came to be so prosperous and why it's still around, is because people were paying money.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I know I'm probably going to get some hate speech on this when we see the responses, but there's a lot of times where it's like I kind of keep my mouth shut on it, and I kind of let people talk. But this is one of those things, especially coming from me knowing so many people in the industry and like knowing so many people on a personal level and how much work they put into it and how much passion they put into it. It's just like it cuts me to the bone when I hear people talk like that, and it's fucking disgusting.
So,
yep.
To tag onto this, because it just occurred to me, Joe off of Models Workshop After Hours, on the episode that I was on, they were talking about, or he was talking about, getting a special model made for Crystal Brush next year. And that he had gotten a quote for someone that was a good price. I think he ended up saying that it was like $500 for this one exclusive model. They were going to do the work to get it done, but he was still going to have to cast it and a bunch of other stuff around it. But to get the model made by a well-known artist, I forget what her name was. And somebody else said, she's pretty good, she had told him it's going to be like 2 or 3 months before I get to you. I have that much work lined up.
Mm-hmm.
And they went, she's pretty good. You'll probably have it back in a week. Once she gets going, she's done in a week. And she normally does 2 models per week. And I was standing back and I'm like, she may have given him a decent deal, but $500 for a week, it's good, but if all of your models are $500 a week, you're making a decent living, but
yeah,
it's still a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that it comes down to, again, that sculptor, what is their time worth? That's a lot of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing that a lot of people don't get. And again, it comes down to that fact that everybody thinks that because this is the gaming industry and we're all creative types and we like sitting around tables talking about how we play D&D or Warhammer or Kings of War or, board games, it doesn't matter. Pick your poison, pick your game, pick your narcotic as far as this hobby goes. And everybody thinks that it's like this shit should come for free, and it doesn't.
Mm-mm.
Look at the cost of what it takes just to put on a small local con where it's literally meant for people to get together and do nothing but play games and talk about the games they play. The person that puts on that convention, and I've heard this before at numerous, smaller conventions that are either something that's trying to be put on by a game store or something that's trying to be, put on by somebody else who's got like their own club. And there's people that said they want to come and play where they're like, oh, well, that's too expensive. Why? What makes it too expensive? Oh, well, because, it's just going to be like 50 people and like the hotel that you picked is expensive and the venue itself is expensive. Why am I paying $30 for the weekend when it's not Gen Con or it's not Adepticon or it's, Nova? Again, pick your convention. They always want to compare it to the big guys. But then they also don't think about the amount of work that it takes that person to get that stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
And how much they have to charge per head in order to make it a possibility. Like, if anybody's ever looked into renting out a convention hotel space, it is not cheap. I can tell you, if anybody who's gone to Adepticon and pisses and moans about the cost of the ticket and the cost of them running events, go ahead and contact any of the hotels in Illinois or Schaumburg and go ahead and ask them how much it will cost you to rent one of those rooms for one day with that many tables. And let me know what that price is. And then ask yourself whether or not you would do the same thing.
Oh, definitely. There was one con. I can't think of what podcast they were talking about it on. I think it was Countercharge, but they were talking about the con and the owner, and the owner, has said it's been going for 3 or 4 years now. I still have not recouped my money from it.
Right, so this guy's hemorrhaging his own money to make sure that everybody else has a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know about anybody else listening to this, but my wife is a pretty strong-willed person. She'd be pissed if I did that.
Yeah.
I think my wife would just shake her head and go, yeah, at this point, if I did it. Kind of a par for the course at this point. Like I said, I owned a food truck. I still own it. And I've still got a bill on it.
Yeah, that does suck. So, yeah, I mean, as far as something like this goes, I would like to hear the thoughts of the community. I mean, this is a big discussion. It is kind of a heady point. But I don't know how else you guys feel about it. I know I've kind of rambled on and ranted and done my little bit. But it's something that I've heard so many times. And, it just... even looking at it from Liz's point of view, where she's a commissioned painter, and like hearing that people have tried to tell her that she's not worth it, that's a slap in the face.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And there is, you've put your work into it, and that's the thing. And we've started seeing that. We've started seeing people sending us stuff saying, "Hey, we put our time in this." We've got one, the gentleman contacted us. I still haven't actually read it. I forgot that I hadn't even sent it to you yet. So I...
Way to go, Dick.
I know, right? I felt totally bad because he also messaged us over the weekend or something like that. I forget when exactly. And I was like, oh, I got to get back to him. I didn't get back to him till, today. And I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Look, life gets busy. People understand.
And totally. And I still haven't read it, so I don't want to say anything about it until I at least have a little bit of a review for it. At the same time, one of our other guests who, around the same time, or one of our soon-to-be guests, he's on next week, he has launched Murders and Acquisition, a neat little RPG. I haven't read all the way through that one yet. I've got to read through it before he shows up on the show so that I know what I'm talking about. I did send that one to Tim, though, so he needs to read it too. But
yes, I do.
He's got a Kickstarter for it, and that went up, I believe, yesterday. Yesterday was really a terrible day. This War of Mine kicked off. A couple other Kickstarters kicked off. I said no more shinies, and then all these Kickstarters that I'm interested in kicked off again.
I've warned you on that, Nick.
What's that?
I've warned you on that.
I've been good so far. I was actually really contemplating stopping at Gigabytes, and Finn's going to be like, well, damn it, why didn't you when he hears this? But I was really contemplating stopping in today on the way, and I'm like, nope. I'm not spending money. I'm not stopping in at Gigabytes. I'm not even going to walk in and say hi. Temptation is too strong. Woosah. But, yeah. No, I definitely want to hear other people's opinions. I mean, I'm terrible. I spend money. My wife hates it. But I don't mind spending money on something that may even just sit on my shelf and look neat. There's a few of those things.
Oh, I have plenty of things that sit on my shelf and just look neat.
So then there was another article that I believe, Tim, you directed me to. It was from BBC Magazine.
Ah, yes.
Yes. So it is titled, Why Are Adults Still Launching Tabletop War? Now, I read through the article, and actually, when I first sat down to read it, I got about 3 or 4 lines in, and I was just like, what the hell am I reading? And, I started coming up with arguments, even before I read the article. So I'm like, no, gotta cleanse the thoughts and just read the article for what the article is so that we can see it. And actually, it's a little bit older now that I look at the date. It was actually published in 2012.
Yes.
I didn't notice that the other day when you sent it to me. I guess I should have, since they just went past their 30th or whatever, because they just launched the new Marine, and it was talking about it being 25. But reading this article, and it focuses mostly on Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, and it goes from questioning why are adults still launching to why are grown men still launching.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
And
interesting.
And it goes through, and it's talking about just some of the different things. One of the first things it describes is Necrons, virtually invincible soulless metal warriors, and Dark Eldar, sadistic elfin pirates, as its intro to what is in Warhammer 40k. And that you may have wandered into the store if you have a teenage child. And it continues on. Now, at one point it says, the appeal is in collecting, assembling, painting the models, and playing the game. But that's it. They don't really get into what makes it appealing, but they also don't ever seem to me to come to a conclusion of, this is why adult men or adults in general launch tabletop war. They never say or come to any conclusion, they're immature or they just haven't fully developed, whatever the hell, they want to make as a point, or anything else. One thing that, when I got to the end and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, why do adults launch tabletop war? And the first game that popped in my head was chess. Chess has been around for how many centuries? Or even Go, or dozens upon dozens of other games where it's you facing off against somebody else. And to me, it strikes me as, why do we do it? I mean, I derive some enjoyment from it. From the painting, from the collecting, all of those are awesome aspects. But when I sit down to play with somebody, it's now can I win? Can I beat you? Am I mentally capable of figuring out what you're going to do and countering it to my advantage? And I've been I'll go nicely in my corner and say I've been 50-50 on that.
It's okay.
It may be a little bit more like 80-20 one way or the other, but I won't go into that one.
This whole, men playing thing is just, it's still stuck in my brain. And stuff like that always nags me when it's like, oh, this is a man hobby.
Well, so the interesting part is you get down about
end,
midway through
almost.
The article, and they talk about a 13-year-old girl who plays, and in this event, she was playing a doubles match with her father, but she said that she will sometimes wear pink on the first day of a tournament just to throw the other players off.
I say good for her on that.
That's what I'm like, you know what? Psychological warfare, that is totally legit. I can get behind that. But then I was like, but would a girl wearing pink facing off against me actually, throw me
Is
off.
that really going to do anything?
And I think in some ways it will, because maybe not just for me, but for anyone, you do get competitive, and sometimes you get certain mindsets. Not to say that women can't play or win, but sometimes guys have a hard time losing to women. I'm married, so I'm used to it. So
it's totally true. When I was married, it was the same exact thing for us. He hated losing to me, but he hated losing in general. It wasn't that it was just the fact that I was female.
right.
But there is still that, like, I don't really know how to explain it. Where people think that guys are better at things than girls.
Yeah, I can
Right.
attest to that, especially with my other hobbies. I mean, I've still got guys that I train with that don't think that a woman has any right to be kickboxing or,
Are you kidding me?
getting into MMA. It's still a man's sport. I mean, some of them are still kind of quoting shit that Matt Brown said a while ago. And, keep in mind, Matt Brown said this shit back in like 2012. He was saying it to be funny, but they take it seriously, where he's like, women shouldn't be in a cage fighting unless they're topless. And I hear that crap all the time.
Wow.
Some
men are pigs. Notice I did say some. Not all men are pigs.
Yeah.
Hashtag not all men.
And it's a very true thing. Actually, the interesting thing is my wife and I, one of the only video games early on that she played was College Double NCA. And she is from Texas and plays Texas Longhorns. I'm from way the hell upstate New York, and I've always rooted for Syracuse. So she used to pummel me until one of the versions you could actually say, hey, just even out the teams. And so at that point, it did really become can we play call well enough to beat the other? And you could see it in our relationship, or, just while playing the game. One of us would get really sullen and angry and snappish with the other, and then, have a stroke of luck where we're coming back, and then, the other one got that way. We would just get so angry with each other while playing.
Yep, been there. I rearranged an entire bookshelf during a game of Malifaux because I was so angry. I needed to step away for like 20 minutes.
What?
Ethan will get out.
Wow.
I'm in there for now.
Yeah. It happens. He killed like 2 of my guys within like the first turn. I was pissed.
Oh man, yeah, that one's always rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife does not play war games, which is probably a good thing because she's also hyper competitive.
Yeah, well, and so, I mean, there is one challenge when we talk about male and female interaction in playing games, and then you say, well, I'm married and I play against my significant other, because there's I know you, or we know each other, and we know each other's quirks, and there's definitely a whole other dynamic than if you just show up at the game shop, and it's someone you know from the game shop that you play against.
Or if you'd show up to a tournament.
Or you
showing up to a tournament is a little different because you're not necessarily going to always know everyone who's there. So you don't know how they're going to act during a game.
Oh yeah. And I've had games. I had a game where I was pulling dice just out of my dice bag, and the guy I was playing, I was rolling pretty well, and he started, oh, your dice are really lucky. And I picked up the dice bag and I just dropped it over to him, and I went, you're as welcome as I am to use anything in that bag. And he's like, oh, no. I don't need to. I trust you or whatever. And it's like, okay. He's like, but what brand dice are them? And they're the ones that every store carries. I forget the brand right offhand.
Chessex?
Chessex, yeah. And he's like, oh, well, those just have a tendency to always roll high.
Wow, that's interesting.
And he went on to say that he has scientifically, continuously rolled them and proven that in the formulas, basically, they roll high. And so then I looked at him again and went, well, you're more than welcome to use my dice then. And he's like, no, I like my dice. I'm like...
Then what's the issue?
Wow.
So now that you know that I roll dice that apparently roll better, are you still going to complain when I'm getting better rolls than you are?
Because clearly you are cheating like a son of a bitch.
Right?
Well, I do that anyways. It's just whether I get called on it or not.
Remind me not to play a game with you.
Well, isn't Malifaux all about cheating?
Yes.
Yes, but there's a mechanic, not being a dick.
Exactly. Like, I did play... I played a game of Malifaux with one of my roommates' wife. That's not what I meant to say. With my roommate's wife. And she, we were playing around, or we were playing and everything, and then she was like, she flipped the Black Joker, and then was like, I'm just going to set this over here. And like set it to the side, joking, and then forgot to put it back in. So we did like 2 more turns, and she never had the Black Joker in her deck. So you can cheat without actually cheating in the game the way it's supposed to be done.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not a good thing.
So
especially when you take the Black Joker out.
So I'm not sure the significance of the Black Joker for Malifaux. But I think any one of us, I mean, you like I said, without knowing the exact significance, you could equate that to the same thing as forgetting a rule that your guys have.
Black Joker is literally the worst thing that you can flip. And if you flip it, you fail. And there's one Black Joker in your deck, and there's one Black Joker in your opponent's deck. And if you are, I think she was like defending or something like that, and if she had flipped the Black Joker, then I would have actually killed one of her models. But because the Black Joker wasn't actually in her deck, that wasn't even a possibility.
Right.
I would have been pissed.
Well, it was her first game. And she's kind of a sweetheart, so I can't be upset. But if it had been someone else, it'll still, I would have been pissed.
Simmer and stew below the surface, but
a little irritated, a little annoyed. I mean, it is a friendly game, so mistakes are going to happen, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I was teaching her how to play the game, basically. So
maybe it was the teacher's fault for not remembering to tell her to put it back.
Yeah. I'll say it was my fault. I don't mind.
Then again, she shouldn't have ever just sat it off to the side, more put it in the discard pile, but
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's an honest mistake. Is it actually cheating? You never know, because somebody could go, oh, that really hurts. I'm just going to set this over to the side. I think we've sometimes said or done something like that. Oh, yeah, we're just going to... And forgotten about it. And it can have implications. Or you're playing Warhammer and, I know I've done it. I know I've had it done to me. Somebody goes, they're this defense, or they're, or this or that or something. And so you roll against whatever they told you. You end up losing, you move on, or you don't get as many hits or, take out as many models, anything like that, and you move on. Or Kings of War, you say, yeah, they're nerve 1920 when actually they're 1819 or 1820 instead of 1920. and oh, I would have wavered you, if I had, that previous turn, and you wouldn't have been able to take out my unit. It's just a cascade of things. But sometimes when you rattle something off from your head because you think it's what it is, are you really cheating, or...
Yeah, I think that depends. The reason why I say that is because if you're learning a new game, you could swear up and down that something that you think is right is wrong. Or in the case of like Warhammer, how many facts are there out there for that damn game? You might have something where it's like, oh, well, this ability is involved in, the fact that came from, Outer Mongolia's copy of White Dwarf. And it's like, nobody else is going to know that, but clearly you do. So you're able to pull off some weird shenanigans because of some rule that you knew about. Because I've done it in games where, it's an honest mistake where I'm used to a model having an ability that admittedly was probably kind of broken. And then it's like, I'm just so used to him having it that when the fact comes out, I'm still going, yeah, he's got a 2-up invulnerable save. And, I'm not thinking anything of it. And then we don't find out until halfway through the game where half of his shit's dead. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he doesn't actually have that anymore. And, of course, then I feel like an asshole.
Exactly.
It wasn't intentional. But at the same time, like Malifaux, I'll use a good example of that. The first time that they ran the Gaining Ground, and this is going back to 2010 when it was still first edition, there was actually somebody that was I forget the term, but basically card counting is allowed in Malifaux as long as like it's not obvious. And what I mean by that is like if you card counting to a point is normal because it's like if you flipped your 4 kings, they're no longer in your deck. But what he was able to do is when he was shuffling, he was actually able to place cards back in his hand in the way that he wanted it. So he was doing like trick shuffling. And nobody caught him until it was already into the finals and everything else. And he already basically got his prize and walked away before people realized that the guy wasn't just like card counting or, didn't like go, oopsie, that rule isn't actually what it is. He straight up cheated.
Right.
So in a case like that where he's coming there knowing that he could shuffle his deck in a way to where he's always getting the red joker back in his hand every damn round, or he's, all of his bad cards are in his hand, he doesn't have to worry about them popping up or something along that. That is legitimate cheating in a game when you were doing it intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm definitely all for tar and feathering someone like that.
Yeah, he did not come back and play any more Malifaux for the rest of the Gen Con weekend, so.
Which is the other thing. Unfortunately, this hobby can, in a broad spectrum, elicit the worst in people. I mean, really, any hobby can. You've got those people, they've got to win. You've got those people, they don't want to spend the money on the rule books. Or, they do want those deals. Or they'll go download the PDF or the torrent or something like that.
And those people are wrong.
Yes, if you're stealing someone's work, just flat out stealing, you are definitely wrong.
And an asshole.
And an asshole. Now, I will say I have bought some stuff off Miniature Market before. Usually their deal of the day. Which they're selling usually somewhere about 50-55% off. Which means they're probably not making their money back on that.
No, they're not.
I don't necessarily feel bad about it because it's not constantly, it's not a lot. It's a good deal and it starts something else off. Actually, every purchase I've made so far has then spawned many, many other purchases from my local game store to build out whatever the hell I just bought.
Yeah, this is true. But yeah, so kind of getting back to this, why are adults still launching tabletop war? I didn't feel like the article said anything as like a good thing for the hobby. They were just kind of like, hey, look at these grown ass men playing with small toys.
Yeah.
Yes. That is the general feel to the end of it, is that, there's grown ass men that get together and they play, and occasionally there's someone's daughter that decides to play as well.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Ugh, some people's kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty much the conclusion of everything that I've seen on all of the articles. I don't know. I kind of felt like I went on a bit of a pissy rant on the first few because it came down to like intellectual property and whatnot. But again, like for me, it is a bit personal. For Liz, I know it's a bit personal. On a different spectrum, it's still dealing with the hobby, but it's her craft.
Yeah.
And so, again, for the listeners out there, if you have any comments that you want to give on it, please feel free to do so. And don't feel you need to hold back. Obviously, we don't. But like, I feel that like that's going to be a common problem. Now, one of the things that my buddy Austin brought up to me as well, that there are times where I can see this, and this comes to the game store level. If you're in an area that has a game store, and that game store is shit, as in like they don't cater to what you want. They almost never seem to care. You feel uncomfortable walking in there. Take your pick of your reasons to why you don't go into that game store, other than the fact that you're a cheap fucker. Okay, let's lay that out there. Other than the fact that you're a cheap fucker, there's some reason you don't go into that game store. Like the people there don't like you. It's a clique. They don't play the same games that you play, and they refuse to order in product. By all means, if you have to go online and get that shit at discount, I can guarantee you at that point, any of those people that are making games that found out that you got that game at a deep discount somewhere are going to be totally happy with you getting it that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not going to sit there and think that you're going to keep doing that repeatedly. If anything, they find out you did that, and if they're smart about it and they're nice about it, they'll direct you to their website where everything probably will be full price. Because they still want, at the end of the day, they still want you buying their products. That is how they make a living. Mm-hmm. But they don't. They also the problem also comes down with these deep discounting is that is when you start. If you were to discount everything across the board, let's say 90% of the industry discounted everything across the board, 30%. Everybody now has this perception that those games are only worth 70% of what they should be. So suddenly, that's 70%, and then it turns into 50%, and then people are basically saying, just give me your stuff for free. So it's a slippery slope.
Oh, yeah. It definitely is. And I just realized something. We totally talked about it, and I know why you now said, Nick, I want you to do the intro today. You were supposed to totally say, hey, you guys.
Oh, yeah, I was. Hey, you guys! There, I did.
Yay! Oh,
and
well,
if
that made my
anyone
night.
gets that reference, go ahead and leave it in the comments. We'll give you internet prizes of internets.
Internet
prizes
hugs.
of internets.
Exactly. All right, so we're getting a little long, so it is closing time for this episode. I want to thank Liz for coming on, especially last minute. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, hey, are you busy tomorrow night? You want to come on a podcast? Cool.
Yep. Absolutely. It was fun.
At first, she was like, get bent, you creeper.
She totally was. She was like, why are you messaging me? I'm trying to paint in quiet.
I was painting in quiet, but not for that reason.
No, it's been great having you on.
Well,
now,
it's been great doing this.
Awesome. Now, some of the little things that we like to say, you can come and find us on iTunes for the episodes. Just look up Skirmish Supremacy. We're also on podcast.com and Skirmish Supremacy there. Also, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Skirmish Supremacy. I, for some reason, can't say the name tonight. We are Twitter at Skirmish Supreme. If you start tweeting at me, I will promise I will start replying back to you. I've just been terribly horrible at actually running the Twitter lately.
And I don't have the Twitter account, so I can't help worth a damn.
Well, I can send you the Twitter account. I mean, jeez.
Oh, no, you got that.
You just barely even got into your email, which is...
Shut your face. It's Tim at skirmishsupremacy.com.
I'm Nick at skirmishsupremacy.com. So you can send your hate mail there. Or we also have a group where you can really put all of your hate. It's Skirmish Supremacy Street Team on Facebook. We're trying to build it up. If you guys join in, feel free to share out our posts with all your friends for the episodes. Help spread the word.
Spam it all over Facebook, even if it gets you kicked out of groups.
Surprisingly, I don't think it has actually gotten me kicked out of any groups yet.
Oh, you're not trying hard enough.
Probably not. I've actually only had one group that goes, hey, can we tone it down a little bit? Or, like, not at all. Unfortunately, that was a local group for here in Atlanta.
Yeah, they don't count.
All right, Tim, do you have anything else?
No, I ranted on quite a bit. I'm expecting quite a bit of hate mail after this one, so I'm just looking forward to reading it.
Well, once they see your profile picture, they'll quiet right down. They'll be scared.
Yeah,
They'll come kick him in the face.
That will.
All right, Liz, do you have anything?
No. Just come and join the Hobby Hangout group on Facebook.
And Liz, I promise one of these nights I will get on there. It just has to be like on a night where I don't have to wake up so damn early in the morning.
It's totally okay. I haven't been on a Hobby Hangout in a few days, so.
Honestly, I've been on there so much that I wasn't sure she even joined them. That's why I invited her on a podcast.
Well,
I'm
okay,
like, I'll meet you eventually.
To be fair, I was out of town for 2 weeks, so I didn't. The internet in the middle of nowhere isn't great.
No, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I definitely know that the internet's not great.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
See ya.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.